Good afternoon, colleagues. Imina 35 na legislature in Guam is back from recess. Before we broke for the recess before lunch, are there anyone? There was a point of information, and at this time, if there was a vote that was made, Assistant Majority Leader, you recognize.
Sainama Asi Maskahalu. Just clarification on where we're at. The author of the bill 219 had set it aside, and I had asked for a motion to place my bill on the third reading file so I could discuss it. And I hadn't realized that there were some appointments, some lunchtime appointments. So I'd like to reconsider the actions of the body and call again to put it on to the third reading file.
On the reconsideration of the body, are there any objections? Are there any objections for the reconsideration of the body? Can you restate your reconsideration? On the reconsider.
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
Before I made a motion to move, set my bill aside, we had broken recess, and we had discussed that we were going to move to recess, and we're going to come back on Tuesday to vote on whatever's on file, on the voting file. Would that motion be appropriate at this time? And I'll make that motion.
State your motion.
The motion is that we recess until Tuesday and vote.
Madam Speaker, I had the floor, and I had mentioned that I was asking for reconsideration.
Senator San Augustine, thank you very much, but the Assistant Majority Leader does have the floor, and there is a motion to reconsider the actions of the body earlier. So on the motion to reconsider the actions of the body, is there an objection? Meaning the actions of the body that there was a reconsideration to speak on a measure. Senator Joe.
What the hell are we talking about?
I'm not in the habit of objecting, but the motion is to reconsider?
The actions of what happened before lunch when the discussion was voted not in support of the discussion of Resolution 167.
So the motion now is to reconsider.
Reconsider the actions of the body. Is there an objection to that?
My motion is just to recess till Tuesday, Madam Speaker. So does that mean that's an objection?
Yes,
Then so be it.
there's been an objection on the floor. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
Can you clarify, when you say in favor, is that in
It's in favor of your reconsideration.
Okay.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. I
There-
can't understand what we are reconsidering here. There was a motion on a bill. We were in second reading. We came up to Resolution 365. She did what we always do, made a motion to put that on third reading and was proceeding to discuss.
And there was an objection to that motion.
Regardless of whatever anyone says, we're debating at that time. That's a motion to put on third
Senator-
reading. It's debatable.
Senator, with all due respect, there was a motion, there was a vote to not hear the motion.
I don't remember
If
that
you-
vote, Madam Speaker, because
I'm,
there's no such motion to not hear something that's on second reading.
there was a
Her
motion to
motion, she didn't
discuss,
make a motion that way. Her motion was to put it on third reading.
and there was an objection to that motion to put on third reading for discussion.
Right, and I'm saying the objection is part of the debate on the motion to
And
put
a
on third
decision-
reading, which is debatable.
And a decision was made by the presider that the motion was in order, and if you want to overrule the presider.
But there was only one
you're-
motion to put on third reading, so
So
that was in
Senator
order,
Talayi,
correct?
is that your
My
motion
point of
to
order,
oversight?
Madam Speaker, there's no motion to reconsider.
Senator, then I will rule you out of order
Ah.
at this time. There is a motion.
So are you
to-
saying, Madam Speaker, then just to clarify, because this is a departure from the rules that we've been following all
Senator?
along, where we place a bill on second reading, and when we get to that bill, we make a
Senator?
motion to put it on third. And that motion is debatable. And nobody can stop you from debating the bill unless they make another motion, which there was no other motion made.
There was an objection to that motion.
Yeah, but there's no other motion.
And if you want to overrule the presiding, you may do so in motion form by asking the body to overrule the decision of the presider. So at this time,
Then,
is there a motion to reconsider the?
I move
to
to
over-
overrule the speaker's ruling on that first motion where she was moving it to third, because, yeah, I think we should just follow our standing rules, and where we're debating a motion to put in third, we debate it. And
On the motion to overrule the presider,
this is the
on the,
suggestion I'm
motion.
getting from legal at this point.
is there an objection? Yes.
Madam Speaker, if I can hear from the parliamentarian, is there anybody here serving in that capacity? Because I don't even know if the motion to overrule the decision of the presiding officer is even appropriate. If the parliamentarian can just give me some guidance.
I will take a moment's recess. Mina 35 na alas 2 and Guahan is back from recess. Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Sujus Masi Maska Halu. So my understanding is that we are in debate.
Restate your motion, Senator Kelly, please.
So my earlier motion was to, sorry, let me get my laptop open. My earlier motion, so I'm just repeating it for clarity, but it had already been stated, is to place Resolution 365-35LS as amended by the author on the third reading file, and I would like to discuss it. So
Please
we
proceed.
had already moved on to discussion. Sainamaasi Maska Halu. This resolution, it's about protecting our resources and our sustainability. It's about fairness to the people of Guam, and it's about doing what is right. We are blessed to live in a rich resource area. It's also a homeland that is special, and the people of that homeland, Chamorros, have internationally recognized indigenous rights. The plants and animals that thrive here have adapted and evolved over the millennia into specific ecosystems with specific relationships one to the other. At the same time, this is a time of change, a time of many challenges to that very thriving, and a time of great loss. These are resources that have fed and sustained the people of the Marianas. They are part of the cultural identity, and they are strong parts of our economy. Dolphin watching tours are actually a lot of what visitors do when they come here. In 2019 alone, 341,000 people participated in dolphin watching tours, making up about 20% of all visitors that came to our island. We have 16 dolphin watching boat tour companies and other related marine tours, from our submarine tour to our fisheye park to our plentiful activities of snorkeling and diving. What we have come to find out over the years, and especially recently, is that our whale populations are significant, and we are significant to them. That our whales are plentiful and predictable enough that we can actually look at diversifying and growing our economy to have whale watching tours. As we rebuild our tourism economy, as we work to protect our resources to drive that economic growth, we need look no farther than what we heard just a few days ago, that according to the National Geographic, they have listed us as one of 25 important spots to visit in the year FY21. And it was based on 5 categories. Of those 5 categories, our nature and our sustainability were 2 important factors, along with adventure, family, and one other category. Within the Mariana Island waters, we have 24 or more different types of dolphins and whales. We have spinner dolphins, spotted dolphins, rough-toothed dolphins. We have pygmy killer whales, false killer whales, which are actually oceanic dolphins. We have dwarf sperm whales, we have sperm whales, humpback whales, and 3 types of beaked whales, among many others. 6 of these species are endangered. Scientists have recently concluded, as recent as February, about the significance of the Marianas to the continued presence of those whales in our world. We are resting, breeding, and birthing grounds. So even though some of this scientific information is new and we're continuing to collect it, people of the Marianas have encountered these whales for hundreds, if not thousands of years. We know this from whaling logs in the whaling industry that used to come here, but also from our traditional seafarers who encounter the whales when they go out. And sadly, they are telling us that they are encountering fewer and fewer of these whales. One of the whales species that we're breeding grounds for, significant breeding grounds, is for the endangered humpback whales. We are thought to be the missing breeding ground that they had long been looking for. At the same time, the US Navy has sought to authorize taking marine mammals during their testing and training activities. And while the term take sounds innocent enough, it is a word that has a whole lot of harm and death to it. According to the Marine Mammal Protection Act, to take is defined as to harass, hunt, capture, or kill, or attempt to do any of those activities. And similarly, the Endangered Species Act defines it as to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, or collect, or attempt to do any of those types of activities. Each of those takes, and there will be takes by the military testing and training activities, is a negative impact, not only to the living creatures themselves, but to the health and well-being of our ecosystems, our community resources, not just for today, but for generations to come. For our children and grandchildren who deserve a marine ecosystem that is healthy and special and plentiful, one that will feed them and sustain them physically, culturally, and economically. Each take is a part of a cumulative effect for our community. We are still fighting to get family land returned. World War II unexploded ordnance is still littering our landscape. DoD Superfund sites contaminated with hazardous waste are still waiting to be adequately cleared and cleaned decades and decades and decades later. We were likely exposed to Agent Orange. We were exposed to radiation from the Department of Defense nuclear testing that happened in the Marshall Islands. We are the poster child of what happens, the devastating degradation to an island ecosystem when an invasive species, in this case, the accidental introduction of the brown tree snake, happens to an island. The devastation of our island ecosystem from that brown tree snake is deep and broad. It illustrates what the introduction or the loss of a single species can mean. Now we are being asked to accept yet another challenge to our community resources and the health of our waters. There is growing concern around the world about the negative effects of powerful active Navy sonar and torpedo countermeasures. There is growing evidence and consensus that there are correlations between active Navy sonar and lethal effects such as whale strandings, which are, in our case, painful deaths. So this is not true just in the world, but it has been concluded so for us. Sonar can put out powerful underwater sounds, producing more than 200 decibels of noise, a level that spreads sound across the ocean and severely harms sound-sensitive marine life like whales. For a bit of understanding, 150 decibels is usually considered enough to burst your eardrums. But the threshold to death is usually pegged around 185 to 200 decibels. What the whales go through is painful and disorienting. Whales use sound for navigation. They find food with it, they hunt with it, they communicate with it. And much of this sonar is along the exact same wavelengths that they use for these activities. They die an untimely and painful death, trying to escape that deafening sound, if they're so lucky to even be trying to escape. They rush to the surface of the ocean and suffer what we call the bends. And if they are not suffering that, they can become so disoriented or disturbed that they may not lunge or feed even after the sonar ends. Such harm and death is also true for the other activities, such as explosives detonated in the water and from torpedo countermeasures, which are basically a system of noise generating devices that are towed or fired off the back of a ship after they detect a torpedo. These devices generate enough sound to mask that the ship is sneaking away. Of the different whales, beaked whales are especially vulnerable to severe and sometimes fatal responses to active sonar. We see this explicitly for the Mariana Islands. There is a very stark contrast. For 40 years, when there was recording going on of all kinds of activities in our archipelago, there were not a single beach stranding by a beaked whale. After the introduction of active sonar, we began seeing on a somewhat regular basis these whales, these beaked whales, washing up dead on our shores. And that is not the full story. The ones that make it to our shores, we don't even know what percentage of them it is that make it to our shores. There are likely numerous others that die that painful death, but then whose bodies just, those dead carcasses simply gravitate to the floor of the ocean. There have been court cases wherein the US Navy has had to recognize the harmful and extremely negative impacts of Navy active sonar and other training, and by court order must limit their activities to appropriately protect dolphins and whales from undue harm. This protection is in our neighboring islands of Hawaii and our neighbor of Southern California in their military training and testing grounds. Our marine mammals deserve no less protection. Testing and training still continues in that Hawaii and Southern California corridor. It is simply limiting those harmful activities to critical habitat areas for the dolphins and whales. Therefore, this resolution on behalf of the people of Guam and their community resources and on behalf of the dolphins and whales themselves, we are calling for using much the same language as is applied to Hawaii and Southern California training and testing study area to avoid approaching the marine mammals head-on, to within critical habitat areas not use active sonar, torpedo countermeasures, or in-water explosives, or other such training that inadvertently harms. To conduct passive sonar first, which means to simply stop and listen for the presence of marine mammals. And if marine mammals are detected, to not carry out harmful activities until they pass. To work with the government of Guam on identifying and adjusting the boundaries of the critical habitat areas for our whales and other marine mammals. Each action that we are calling for is relatively simple to carry out and is already being applied to our neighboring areas of Hawaii and Southern California military training and testing area. Within a short period of time, we've had 2,165 people sign a petition to support this resolution, and people are still signing on. Between yesterday when I looked at it and today, the numbers continue to grow. We are simply asking for our dolphins and whales and for the people of Guam for fairness and to be afforded the same humane protections as other neighboring U.S. jurisdictions. Suduas Maasi, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Tachno, Assistant Minority Leader. On the main motion, anyone wishing to speak? Senator Therese, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd just like to briefly add, I support this resolution. And when it was first introduced, it was prior to the record of decision coming out on the Mariana Island training and testing area, which is, of course, the training and testing where sonar is conducted. And so it was important at that time and now to ensure that Guam's waters will be treated in the same way. And I heard the Admiral the other day on the radio saying that, he's read this resolution and they are doing this already in Hawaii and California, and that they would do it on Guam. So I'm glad to hear that. The issue was, however, that they did not do it willingly in Hawaii. There's a range, like a training and testing range, like the one surrounding the Mariana Islands. There's also one that goes from Hawaii to Southern California. It's that large. And it included, at the time, critical conservation areas for whales. And so it took a court order to force the military at that time to make an exception for those critical habitats for the whales, to limit their activities in those critical areas, because otherwise their record of decision allowed them to conduct the activity with no limits as to area, I think, and of course frequency. And so this is important for us because when the record of, just recently, we had a MITT, Mariana Island Training and Testing MIT record of decision was made by the Navy. And so they decided, of course, to continue with their training and testing activity in the Mariana Islands. This was because their MIT from 2009 had expired, or the prior one, yeah, it had expired. And, 2015, because it's 5 years. So, it had expired, they needed to renew it, and so they did. And so they did an environmental assessment. And despite, the environmental assessment talks about the adverse impacts that could happen, the record of decision still went through. So the importance of this resolution today is to ensure that because it was not included in the record of decision, these protective measures that they would take, and because it took a court order in the other jurisdictions to ensure that those activities or certain areas were protected, from sonar, that we are putting on record that we are requesting that also be applied to Guam without a court order and, of course, without it being acknowledged in the record of decision. Just as a reminder, in the last MIT, so right now, after the record of decision, they're now applying for their permits. They applied to the National Marine Fisheries Service for permits that actually allow the take, as the author described, the harm to these mammals. And in the last permit, 5 years ago or earlier that they received, they were allowed by the National Marine Fisheries Service 81,962 takings. That includes injury, disrupt natural behavioral patterns, hunt, capture, or kill of 26 different dolphin and whale species per year for 5 years. So that's 81,900 per year for the 5-year period. So I expect that the permits that they are going to receive under the current ROD are going to be very similar. I mean, they didn't put anything different in their record of decision. I don't think that, anyways, just guessing that they would be similar. It's a huge amount of harm, I think, and so if we can try to prevent that, especially with the new discoveries of critical habitat for these species here in the Mariana Islands, things are evolving, and so I'm very glad to support this resolution that will help to put those things on the record so everyone knows how critical this habitat is and how harmful the sonar is, as those studies too are also evolving. So I stand in support of this resolution. I thank the author for it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator Therese. On the main motion, Senator Sabina, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I just want to put on the record that I did write a letter to NOAA requesting reinitiation of the biological opinion in light of a recent publication of some studies. And one of the studies that really caught my eye was the one that the author had mentioned. The title is Found a Missing Breeding Ground for Endangered Western Northern Pacific Humpback Whales in the Marianas Archipelago. So what this paper brings to light is that, so in my understanding of the reading, is that there is a population of these very endangered, highly endangered species, the humpback whales, which are known for their whale song. And there's a specific subset of them that migrates from the Mariana Islands to the Commander Islands where they feed. And the way they track this was through the mother's lineage. So it's a matrilineal lineage that we're talking about. And I thought that was very resonant because, as Chamorros, we identify with that. We identify with the matrilineage. And here we have the marine counterpart that has a preference for the Mariana Islands. And I think this is very important because, I think it's always important to connect to our surroundings, our environment. Because once we connect, we can protect and preserve. I think that's one of the things that are very important. And, this is part of our natural heritage, our natural and cultural heritage that is important to protect. And I have so much respect for cetaceans and whales. They've long surpassed the survival of the human species. They even have a fourth lobe, right? So, which I think is pretty amazing. They have a certain intelligence. And so these laws that we have, so the big one is the Endangered Species Act, right? And I think it's very contradictory that this very important piece of legislation, the Endangered Species Act, allows for the taking of endangered species. The way it was explained to me is that, and this is how it's practiced, right? That as long as you don't jeopardize the species, they permit the take of individuals. And I just think that's very contradictory to what the title of the Endangered Species Act is about. And so, I think we're really kind of I beg to differ that, 81,000, the permit to take 81,000 individuals, and some of them really critically endangered. I think, and part of the reason why this is taking place, it has to do with the unequal balance of power, as a colony. The fact that I wrote this letter and I got basically a response saying we took care of it. The idea is that we are not part of the conversation. It's a conversation between two federal agencies that are making these decisions about the long-term sustainability of these species. So I think this resolution is very important because it's giving voice to these critically endangered species, and it's giving voice to a people that is trying to protect our natural and cultural heritage. And I think we must do everything in our power to protect them, to speak up, to give voice that don't have a voice. And I want to close with a quote from Winona LaDuke. If we build a society based on honoring the earth, we build a society which is sustainable and has a capacity to support all life forms. And we must continue to do this. Zuas Masi.
Thank you, Senator Ferris. On the main motion, if no one else wishes to speak, Senator Taitano, you can close. Assistant Majority Leader, you're recognized.
Sainama Asi Maske Hulu. My laptop had shut down on me, and I'm trying to get back to the title of the resolution so that I can read the updated title and also just acknowledge my co-sponsors. So the updated title that's part of everybody's author's report is relative to Pratehi'i Mambadzena urging the U.S. Navy to, in identified habitats, cease its use of active sonar, torpedo countermeasures, and in-water explosives that take or harm marine mammals. Use passive sonar to detect the presence of marine mammals and provide all information as declared necessary by the government of Guam in order to determine boundaries of habitat areas of beaked whales and other cetaceans. So this information is so new that defining those critical habitat areas is something that is actually at its initial stages. So it's good to hear that the military is saying that they're carrying out such measures, but without any identified critical habitat areas. This is definitely something that they need to be doing along with the government of Guam, as is called for in this resolution, so that they know where those areas are and the protection is indeed occurring as everyone intends. So with that, this resolution, as I mentioned, it's about defense of our resources. It's about protection of the environmental drivers of our tourism economy. It is about fairness to our people, and it's about doing what is right. Each action that we are calling for is relatively simple to carry out and already being applied to our neighboring areas of Hawaii and Southern California military training and testing area. What we are simply asking for is that our dolphins and whales and the people of Guam are treated fairly and afforded the same humane protections as other neighboring U.S. jurisdictions. Real leadership is about standing up for one's community. It is about looking at the bigger picture. It is about ensuring sustainability for our island and our resources. It is about not being short-sighted and robbing from our children their ability to survive and thrive. Leadership is instead securing a successful, sustainable future for them by safeguarding their resources. And with that, I do want to add on as co-sponsors the Legislative Secretary, Senator Amanda Shelton, and you speaker as well, Senator Tina Rose Munya-Barnes. Assiduous Masi, and I hope for consideration from those who are here in this body to support their children's wealth and inheritance. Assiduous Masi.
On the motion, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Assistant Majority Leader, motion to the voting file, please.
I motion to move to put the resolution to the voting file.
On that motion, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Assistant Majority Leader, on a motion to recess till 9 o'clock to vote on all those measures that are in the voting file, can you please place the motion? Tuesday, December 1st.
I motion to recess to vote on all of the measures that we have discussed and put into the voting file until Tuesday, December 1st at 9 a.m.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries.